Welcome to The Business Fighter with Henry Penix. Henry has been the CEO, founder, and consultant to hundreds of companies worldwide. He retired a multimillionaire, financially independent at the age of 35. Henry grew up a preacher's son and was thrown in jail 3 times for various altercations. He knows what it means to come from nothing and have to fight his way to the top. Henry is the business fighter who will teach you strategic skills for winning in business and in life. Don't just spectate, participate. It's time to get in the ring.
Hey guys, this is Henry Penix, the business fighter, coming to you with our podcast today. I've got a very, very special guest. I was first introduced to this young lady a few years ago. I think we were speaking at an event. We were doing some training together, met each other. We became instant friends, and she leads a very busy life. You name it, she's been there. And again, I'm so happy that she was able to make the time to be with us today. Please welcome Vanessa Horn. Vanessa, welcome.
Pleasure to be here. So delighted.
Yeah, thank you. We haven't talked in a few months, but I assume everything continues to go well with you.
Super exciting. Yeah. Like you, like things keep moving.
Yeah. There's no friction there. What I like to do when I bring on a guest, I love to bring on a guest that has the heart. I promise my audience that whoever I bring on, they not only have the talent, the brain power, the firepower, but they've got the heart. And that stands out to me about you most of all. And, you know, you've been to the very top of the mountain, but you didn't start there. If you don't mind, I would love to hear, and I know my listeners would love to hear kind of that path that you began to take when you knew that you were maybe going down the wrong path, or there was a better path that you could take. What prompted you to do that? And just kind of lead us through a little bit of that, if you will, please.
Yeah, I know that your audience is entrepreneurs. So I will share a little bit about that journey and what I've learned along the way. Please. I have been an entrepreneur since the last 16 years when I was pregnant with my firstborn, which was my motivation to leave my comfy corporate job and venture out into the world of entrepreneurship so I could be present for my boys. Now, my husband has a heart and a passion for the ministry. So, you know, he would much rather just like sell everything and go and live in the inner city. So,
right.
So for me, it was like, okay, like I have this thing for business. I have my master's in business. So I've always had a passion for it. And I was like, well, here we go. Like it just encourages you to be, when you have a big driving why like that for me, which was to make a big difference in the world, but to also be present and available for my family. That's when I launched into entrepreneurship for the first time. And it's been quite a journey in different industries, building that. And I've learned a lot of different things along the way. Yeah. And, you know, and especially as these desires that we have as entrepreneurs and human beings, which is one, to make a difference. Right? Most of the people who are listening to your podcast are probably wired the same way that you and I are, which is how can I make a contribution with the gifts and talents that I've been gifted to be able to make somebody else's life better? Number 2, how do I provide for my family financially? How do I take care of my health so I'm not compromising that? How do I cultivate a relationship with my partner, with my spouse, and with my kids? So it's this like desire to kind of keep the whole thing in balance. Right. And my journey as an entrepreneur has been these tugs of each one of those areas being challenged or being strained, and like finding the balance of a sustainable business while not compromising any one of those areas. And I would say one of the biggest things that was a breakthrough in that entrepreneurial journey for me was a couple of years ago. My husband and I were at a very challenging moment in our relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you or your listeners have had those years in your marriage where it's like a challenging season.
Yep.
And it was a bad season for me. As a matter of fact, I kind of like told my husband, like, I'm giving you, it was so bad that at that point I was seriously entertaining, like maybe divorce is a better journey for us. Right. And maybe And I was like, but I can't while the kids are still home. So I was like, okay, 10-year warning. Like, I'm not sure this is going to work out when the kids move out of the house and we're empty nesters. Like, I'm not sure about our connection.
Right.
And, but something powerful really happened. And I think that your listeners can relate to this. I picked up a book. I don't even know how it was referred to me now. I picked up a book that was called Family Wealth by a gentleman, James Hughes Jr. And he's an attorney. He helps people with their financial planning. And of course, as entrepreneurs, like, we're building things to be profitable, to be wealth building for our families. So the financial wealth, like, that's a given for entrepreneurs. But he would talk about two other significant wealths, which opened my eyes and changed my perspective and approach to entrepreneurship, which was the wealth of your relationships that you also pass on to your children.
Wow.
And the wealth of your intellectual property and the lessons you've learned, and those learnings being captured in such a way that they're passed on generationally.
Wow. Powerful.
And in that moment, I knew, no matter how successful my businesses may be, that the gift I was giving my kids in that moment was for them to see how we navigate it. And especially as entrepreneurs, where personal life and business life are intertwined more intimately than, like they say, I wanted to be an entrepreneur so I could have the flexibility of working those 18 hours a day, no matter which hours I choose. Like,
right. Exactly. I've heard that.
And it just made me realize, like, you know what? It doesn't matter how successful I build my business if I am not also showing my children how we can navigate during these challenges. And it had me invest as heavily to sorting that dynamic out, and also investing in creating, capturing my intellectual property, both of those things, which he pointed out as the additional wealth areas during that season of my journey.
Wow. How good. Yeah. Cause you always hear, people ask me, they say, Henry, that's just business. Don't take it personal. And my business is personal. I mean, for the 18 hours I do work, you have family life balance. I don't think that ever exists. I think you have family life integration. I think you have family business life integration, where you actually bring them a part of your world and teach them those lessons along the way. I mean, you even see that in nature when the little lion cub follows the lion for how many months to learn how to hunt, learn how to prance, learn pounce and prance and dance and whatever else to survive. But sometimes we want to make that separation from our kids or our family, and we'll all come be mommy to you when that time comes. Well, no. This is mommy. This is what she does. This is dad. This is what he does. Look at what I'm doing, because people will always see what you're doing, but they rarely hear what you're saying. So when you set that perfect example in front of them and teach them how to survive, I couldn't agree more. That's amazing. Wow. So how did that kind of change up your tone, or how did you look at life differently from that point?
It's fascinating when you change your framework and your perspective about a situation, how quickly the behavior changes. So now all of a sudden, when I was putting equal value on the wealth of our relationship, equal value to my, the wealth I might be creating in other areas, it had me say, like, okay, rather than us being in conflict, how can we work together? So rather than being in a surviving marriage, let me just survive this thing. How can we create a thriving marriage? And I remember at one stage, my husband's like, it's like you have your own language over there with all your coaches. And I was like, oh yeah. And I could feel that distinction of us going in a little different direction. And I was like, we've got to create a shared language. Otherwise this is not going to work. And I've heard more and more people. I've been paying attention to this dynamic I'm noticing in marriages where someone feels like they outgrew the other person. Right. And therefore that leads to, them going separate paths. And I think that can easily happen unless we're intentional about, okay, I could go a separate path, but I want to choose us. And now we've been married 21 years.
Oh, congratulations.
21 years. And it's choosing for it to be thriving and a shared language. And like you said, like that distinction and that separation of personal and family. As a matter of fact, my son, he's 14 years old. He had a concussion. He's been home with me since February. You and I are recording this in the summer. So he's been almost 6 months at home with me, missing school because his concussion was so bad. Well, there's two things I'm really passionate about in business: not being afraid to have the difficult conversations with grace, and secondly, sales. So I've been working with him on that while he's home, and I've been teaching him about sales. And it's funny because he turned it around on me, because I talk about sales like really connecting to what does the other person value. You have to, whatever it is you're selling, you have to be in tune like with what they want most and what they value. And it was so funny because he's like, Mom, I think we should put in a swimming pool. And he started to sell me on how it was part of my retirement plan.
Oh my God, using your own methods against you.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Well, you know that, I mean, my listeners, they love sales. And when I talked to you a few days ago and asked you to be on my podcast, you responded, you said, sales is my jam. And I'm going to be remiss in my duties if I don't ask you this right now. And thank you for sharing that stuff about your life and even a more personal nature. I think that's huge. But take me to this level. Take me to, if you were telling your son, and maybe it's the same thing you've told your son, the top 3 areas in sales that you are like the best at, or you must make happen, or those top 3 tips, tools, or techniques that will allow you to make the sale or close the sale. I mean, talk to my audience like you would your own son. Like, what advice do you want to leave as a legacy to him, and you could teach us right now? These are 3 nuggets. I always ask my the people I'm interviewing to leave some golden nuggets in an interview. And I think this is you've already left some, but what are those top 3 like sales nuggets? Teach around 2 or 3 of those right now.
So, and let me just start by sharing why I'm so passionate about sales.
Please.
And sometimes, and it's this same kind of dichotomy that we're talking about, separating personal and our business life. Some people separate sales as like this other category. Truthfully, we're all salespeople. I mean, when I talk to people about sales, maybe sometimes it's negotiation for a deal. Sometimes it's negotiation for their job and a pay raise. Maybe, but in most cases, it's how do they sell more of their products or their services. And my passion is so that for the audiences the entrepreneurs who say, I want to be best in category. If you want to be best in category, you have got to get the sales piece nailed down. And you've got to be able to make your product or service distinguishable from everything else that's out there. If you're going to be the Ritz-Carlton in your industry, what is making it worth it for somebody to invest for a product or service at that level?
I totally agree. I teach my kids, I use the word differentiator. What's your differentiator? What makes you different than the thousands of things that you're competing with? So I'm with you here.
So to me, sales is one of the most valuable skills that an entrepreneur can learn. And to me, sales starts in the marketing stage, because that's really pre-selling. If you do that well, you're creating desire for your solution. And then you all come to the conversion point where they actually say yes and buy. And then sales to me lingers into the client onboarding experience, because if you don't nail that, you can lose the sale and now you're refunding or whatever else. So It's really 3 parts. So I'm passionate about sales as one of the most valuable, actually, I would probably argue the most valuable skill that we can know as entrepreneurs. And that it's 3 stages of marketing, the actual enrollment, our conversion point and the client or customer onboarding. But if I were going to talk to my son, I would say, number one, who's doing most of the talking? If I'm going to transcribe a sales or an enrollment conversation, the salesperson versus the customer, the salesperson versus the client, we're going to transcribe it and we're going to highlight in yellow who is doing most of the talking. Who's it going to show?
Probably the salesperson.
Incorrectly.
But it shouldn't be. Right.
No.
Why is that?
Because that is what people want to avoid. As a matter of fact, I was at ORU, which you and I have a connection with ORU.
Right.
And one of my mentors said, Vanessa, go into sales. And I was like, I don't want to be a salesperson. Like he said, it's transferable to any industry. And I was like, I don't want to be pushy. I don't know. That's not me. And it took me years later to value the skill set and to get really good and committed to learning it and doing well with it. And it's that pushy feeling that none of us want to be as salespeople. What I've discovered in this journey of selling from a heart-centric place, from an other-centered place, and sales really is that juncture, that moment when somebody is committing to themselves, not to me as the seller. They're committing to themselves, to what they say that they want. They're taking inspired action, and I'm simply facilitating that. If we transcribe the conversation and I'm the one that's primarily talking, it's that energy of push, whether that versus that energy of invite.
Oh, I love that. Energy of push. You don't want the energy of push. You want an energy of invite, because if the customer says it, it's right. If the salesperson says the exact same thing, it's wrong. Or not as right.
Yeah. So
wow,
that's the first thing. Who is doing the majority of the talking?
Okay.
Number two, I would say, listen for how they've sold themselves. This is where you tie into values.
Okay.
And I'll start off with a question like, what resonated with you most to reach out to us? Mm-hmm. They'll tell you in that. And if you take a leadership position in a sales conversation, you can ask the prompting questions that reveal how they've sold themselves and proactively overcome the most common objections. And so this is where I was teaching my son, and he gathered, if mom is valuing her securing her future with her retirement, how can I get what I want, which is a pool, if I tie it to something she values?
Oh my gosh. What a smart kid. How old is he?
14.
Oh Lord,
I'm in trouble.
I was going to say that.
He was selling me on a gaming console. Is going to be part of his business plan. So
right. So he has to have it.
yeah. This $3,000 computer, Mom. It's not a gaming console.
yeah. It's an investment in my future.
Yeah.
You want me to succeed, Mom, so I can take care of you?
Yes, and this is how I'm going to make a business out of it, Mom.
Wow.
So that is the second thing. And then the third is, I teach a choreography when it comes to sales. And I'll give you an example. I'm really mindful. And if I point back in this interview where I gave some context to my philosophy about sales being the pre-sales, the sales conversion point, and the client onboarding, those are the three stages. Right. That is a mini insight into my framework. So I teach my salespeople to sell. If you're selling a product, the best way to sell it is a demo. If you're selling a service, the best way to sell it is a framework. And I had a guy, for instance, in this particular group in Facebook, he goes, who's the best high ticket seller you know? And I looked and there were 134 comments. I'm like, this person, me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, heck, I'm putting my name in the pot. So I typed my name in. He interviewed me. We had a great connection. He went and interviewed all 134 people. Well, meanwhile, I'm waiting for him to go through the whole list. I record a video recording my iPad and I walk him through, listen, here's how I would 5X your business. Here's the approach I would take. And I walked him through the gaps that I was seeing in his business around the pre-sales, sales, and post-sales. And I drew the model where I saw his gaps. I'm like, here's how I would approach it. And I sent it to him in Facebook Messenger. Hey, just following up. I've been thinking about our conversation and I just want to give you, here's how I would go about approaching this. Needless to say, out of all 134 people, he hired us, my team and our agency. Wow. And when I asked him why me versus the other 134 you interviewed, he said, Vanessa, you were the only one who followed up with a video, but had a very specific methodology versus just touting, oh yeah, I can do it, I'm the best. And it was clear that you had a systematic approach and you distinguish why you versus anybody else. And that's what's necessary for us to be the premier provider in our markets. So those would be the three things I would say around sales.
So the why was huge there. You can let your demo of yourself represent, who you are. And when people see that, I know I saw that in you, Vanessa, when I connected with you about 3 or 4 years ago, I believe it was. And you, I found that you had a very special way and a very high calling and gifting in looking at a bunch of information and finding out what of that is really relevant, how I can use what I already have. And if I need to add something to it, this is what you need to add to connect the dots. And I'm not for sure where that comes from in your mind, in your past, you being an MBA. I don't know if you learned it there. I don't know if it's all of the above, but whatever it is, I know you have that gifting. And that's why I wanted you to be on this podcast, because if people can listen to this, even what you've already said, people pay thousands upon thousands of dollars for courses like this. If they just listen to what you already said, they're going to grow. And if they actually do it, what bothers me is, and I'm in a lot of different businesses as well, just like you, I speak to people all around the world. So few people follow up and do what they say they're going to do. And that sounds so, it's like I say that in every other one of my conversations. Like I'll give somebody the benefit of the doubt. And I wind up telling them, I believed in you more than you believed in you. Like, why didn't you come back? Why didn't you just say that one little extra thing? Because if you do that, talking about differentiation like we were earlier, what's that uniqueness about you? Just follow up. Promise an 8 and give a 10. Do that little extra. Go that extra inch, not even the extra mile. Go the extra inch, and you're going to differentiate yourself from so many different people. But I'm so glad to hear that from you and about you. And I wanted to get to you. I wanted to get you on this podcast because of your talent. Before we get too much further into it, I've got a couple more questions. Tell people how they can connect with you. If they want more of what you have, what can they read about you? Where can they go? How can they connect with you? Because I believe in you. I know they'll believe in you.
Well, anybody who wants support creating high-end clients specifically or customers online, that's my jam, as we said earlier. VanessaHorn.com is my main domain. And if they want access to a training that goes deeper on these particular sales strategies that I was talking about, probably the best place that I would point them to for that is highendssalessecrets.com. highendssalessecrets.com, where it's a little more in depth than what we were able to cover today. But I did want to go back to something you said about the positioning and that uniqueness about that helps each person. So this is what community is about, because we can see in each other genius that helps us to serve each other as entrepreneurs, to say, hey, let's bring that a little bit further intentionally in your messaging, because that will help you stand out. Like you and I were talking and I was like, Henry, you are putting into the hands of the Davids the 5 smooth stones they need to fight their Goliath, because you're the fighter for business owners, no matter what challenge they meet, no matter what their Goliath may be. And that gives you a unique angle, unique positioning, and unique value you're able to accentuate in your messaging for those who want to hire you as a consultant or to serve them in their businesses.
Wow. No, that's it. It's so funny you say that, because I'm working on a book right now, and it talks about me growing up being fighting for what's right, fighting for people who are the underdogs, literally. And I just, for some reason, my life was consumed with that. And the more I stood up for the right thing to do, and the more I stood up defending other people, the better I got at it. And the more confidence I got, like all of a sudden it's like, why am I in this room? I got invited a couple of times to the United Nations and was giving credentials to be at the United Nations, even in Europe. And I'm there standing going, why me? Like, why? What did I do to get here? And then I started seeing in my mind some of those fights that I had fought and won, and then how I can empower others to fight and win as well. And my gosh, I feel such a kindred spirit with you too, because you get it and you're along that same path. I love it.
Yeah, you're in the business of courage.
Yeah. I tell people, a lot of people, you just need to find what that leverage point is, whether it's in sales or marketing or whatever. And that gives you the confidence, and that gives you the, little extra added value to win your negotiations, your sales, your strategies, whatever it is. So I wanted to ask you one more thing before we leave. And I feel like I could talk to you forever. I get into these conversations about 15, 20 minutes. It's like, we're just warming up, like now it's starting to ooze out. You have a specialty, and this is the last question I'm going to say. By the way, this is Henry, the Business Fighter. If you're just tuning in, we're here with Vanessa Horn, entrepreneurial rock star. Sales is her jam. She will teach you so much. Please, please, please connect with this girl. She's amazing. I have the utmost respect for her. But Vanessa, you're really big about, I'm looking on your website right now. It says you're called to make a difference. And when people hire you or want you to do something for them, it seems like the human mind automatically goes to, well, should I really charge this much? Or am I worth it? Like, would somebody pay me $1 million to show up for the day versus $1,000? I'll use the two extremes. You're so good at encouraging people to finding their own value and to not back away from their true value when they charge in those arenas. Can you address that just for 2 or 3 minutes? Because I've heard you talk on it a little bit before, but I would love for my listeners, guys, listen up to this, because this by itself will also change your life. Could you address that just a little bit, Vanessa? Because I love the way you speak about it.
I love this work. Like I always tell people, and my clients especially, I'm like, beware, your rates will go up from us working together. Like, it's just going to happen. People are going to pay you more. And what I found is it's not, because when we can intentionally create value, this is about, like, no, people don't have any, from my experience, they're service oriented. They want to pour out their hearts. Just like my husband, I'll sell it, I'll go to the inner city. Like, I will overgive. I will serve to and then they have a challenge actually receiving for it. But it does not take away from the client for you to be well compensated for what you do, so that we can continue to grow our businesses and our impact in the world. And the way that I encourage my entrepreneur clients around pricing is, what is the cost if your prospect does not have your solution compared to your price? Like, people always think, well, it's worth this or this, or they get this or this, and they start pricing out features. I'm like, no, what's the cost if they do not get this in their life? That's what you're really comparing price to. And then what's the value, exponential value? How does it affect every area, and the ripple effect of them having this solution? They wouldn't be on the phone with you if status quo were okay. They sought something out to get fixed, serve them powerfully, open the door for them to take inspired action on what they want most. And my belief is, when the transference of money occurs, and especially when it's at a little bit of a higher level, we are committed at a higher level, therefore they get greater value.
Wow. Beautiful. Guys, I hope you listen to this podcast 10 times over and over and over, because what she just said, that alone will change your life. And Vanessa, that spoke to me so strongly because I've been in the arenas where I'm speaking to 20, 30,000 people, and my heart, I want to give my books away. Like I want to give services away because I want to serve people. I want people to help. I want to help them like I wanted to be helped when I was 21 or 22 or 25 or 35 or whatever. But if people don't invest, if there's not a transference of money, guys, I hope you heard her say this, the value's not there on their side. Like I found that the books that I would give away, people would throw away and not even read. But the books that I would sell or sign or add significance to, they would carry it around like a Bible. Don't you touch that. This book cost me $20. There's like that value. I'm hearing you loud and clear. And I'm thinking of the times in my life where I needed you more, Vanessa. I needed this message.
Wow. You know where to find me.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Tell people one more time before we sign off where they can connect with you again.
VanessaHorn.com is the easiest place. And if they want to get immediate access on the site, they'll see the trainings and resources available around sales or really packaging your expertise or unique value proposition. But if you want immediate access to the sales training, go to highendssalessecrets.com.
If I heard that domain name, highendssalessecrets.com, I would go to it just regardless. I mean, that's like where the pot of gold is. Guys, this has been Henry, the Business Fighter. We've had Vanessa Horn with us today. She's done about 3 different parts of this podcast. Usually I concentrate on one part, but she is so talented. Go back and listen. She'll talk a little bit about family relationship. She talks about the sales strategy that her son used on her. She taught him, and then he turned around and used it right back on her. She gave us the 3 primary steps that she would teach her own family in sales. And then she's talking about the value of valuing yourself. What value do you place on yourself? The confidence you need to ask for a certain price and a certain exchange of money to get a product or service. And don't ever undersell yourself. Vanessa, this has been amazing. Thank you for being on the podcast. This has been Henry, the Business Fighter. You guys can catch me on Instagram, Facebook, all those other places. Please, please, please go look up Vanessa Horn, VanessaHorn.com to connect with her, and your life will be better for it. Think about 10 people right now, and I say this on a lot of my podcasts, but this podcast has really moved me, Vanessa. Think about 10 people right now that would benefit from hearing these things, and take 2 minutes. Just take 2 minutes to send that out and enhance someone else's life. This is free. I don't charge for these podcasts at all. Send it out to 10 people, and I promise you see how that will come right back and bless you in your life. Vanessa, thank you. Hang on a few minutes. I want to talk to you a little bit longer, but it's been a pleasure, and I hope to do this again very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, see ya.